6 o'clock, I call the meeting.
Parents.
6 o'clock, well, it's 6 o'clock in Southwood, that's what we go with.
Sending that back to one of their kids.
I call the meeting to order.
You know,
Oh.
like a
Thank you. First item on business is public comment. If anybody has a comment, please come up to the table, you can do the podium. You have 3 minutes, and direct your comments to the board and not to the public. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say? Is he supposed to be here?
Yeah.
Is that he requested?
But it's possible he's late. I will find
All
out.
right. All right. Next item is number 3, Tom Murdoch, Chair of the Advisory Budget Committee. Tom, come up.
Okay. So these are the Advisory Budget Committee recommendations based on information that we currently have. We didn't have all the information. And some changes from the budgets proposed by departments. So recommending adding in the $5,592.52 for Stratford Regional Planning dues. There was quite a bit of interest expressed that people wanted that for various reasons back in. Recommend the addition of funding for ORIA. It's not really an addition, it's the same thing that we did last year, but and it was down from their recommendation of funding for them for $30,000. So recommended the removal of $10,000 from the Recreation Commission for the Recreation Director. Once again, there was much discussion about this, and it's something that we were considering, but not at this time for this year because of limited funding and so forth. Recommend government building funding increase by $10,000 to cover the actual cost of the rent for the daily building, the town hall, which needs to be in there. Recommend removal of $15,633 from the bonus line item of personnel administration. Recommend removal of $11,000 for the online building permits application for the planning and zoning budget. Recommend the Board of Selectmen increase funding for the transfer station, $22,000, and personnel administration, the amount of $2,000 for half a person to get Steve the help that he needs. We think desperately. That was it. The ABC recommends the Board of Selectmen approval of the 2023 total budget of $5,646,279.07.
Any questions? Tom, can you elucidate in terms of your opening statement, in terms of the information you didn't get?
We didn't have the information from the CIP this year. I guess there was scheduling issues, and then we tried to reschedule, and they never did.
Okay. Thanks.
So that was also a discussion at the budget committee that's possibly a recommendation. I think it's already been taken care of, so we didn't really want to put it in writing, but something that needs to be looked into to make sure that we do get all the information that we need in a timely manner to be able to make the decisions that we need to do to recommend the budget to you. So I have a feeling that's already happening, but recommending that you follow up.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay?
Any questions for Tom? Anybody in the audience have any questions for Tom? You're off the hot seat, Tom.
All right, thank you very much.
Number 4, Annie Gazowski, Library Trustees Chairperson.
That was easy compared to the last few years. Fighting.
The library trustees have been consulting with Steve Bullock about a couple of things that deal with the building. And we have two furnaces. The front one is under warranty, although it is not working. Under warranty, we hope to have it fixed under warranty. We just have to pay for the labor. The back furnace is really old and pretty much non-functional. There's no air handling or air conditioning system for the building. The one that's outside, close to the museum, is 20 years old, and I think it was donated years ago. So they're relying on a couple of air conditioner units and windows, and it really is not a very good situation. So in speaking with Steve, we've come up with about $35,000 that would handle these things. Now, that's only about the air handling in the building. As far as the broadband goes, we've read through that document, and we recently upgraded the broadband for the library, so we were wondering if that could be reimbursed. And also, there are a couple of additional things that would be needed, router, switches, things like that. We have a list of those that we have put together. We also are going to be needing upgrades in computers, but if we take those items out of that 5,000, it'll be less than that. So I have a list of those things, and we'll pass them on to Steve, and hopefully whenever you start making decisions about this, that you'll consult us again.
So can we have somebody take a look at the program and see if,
We can. I had looked in two levels. The most direct level of ARPA funding would be through the grant that was given to states that New Hampshire has not clearly defined broadband in it, although there is a very definite provision for broadband, and they specifically mentioned community buildings such as public libraries as targets of the money. And I will find out exactly when they're going to release those definitions, and we could apply for that money. I think it's much more direct than just a standard ARPA money. You would actually apply to the state. It's a portion of $10 billion that New Hampshire received.
It would be in addition to the ARPA money received, correct?
It's in addition to the ARPA money that the communities received.
Great.
can you also check in, because one thing Andy said is in terms of reimbursement for what they've done already,
Right.
so I don't know if that's part of it as well.
Yep.
We received some ARPA money through the New Hampshire libraries, and with that money that we wrote the grant, and we'll put the story trails out into the trails, the storyboards.
Yep, that's great.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Andy?
Nope.
Thank
Talk
you.
to Danny Friday and
Thanks, Annie.
Oh, Andy, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Will there be a public announcement at some point on the new person?
Yes, she'll be starting January 3rd, so I figured we would put something into the e-crier. There's still some time for that.
Let's circle back to number 2. Mr. Hall,
Yes,
do you want to come up and talk to us?
sure. So my name's John Hall. I'm a nurse practitioner and I work over.
Actually,
Oh,
can we get you the
sorry.
microphone?
I apologize.
Sorry, it looks so inviting there.
So my name's John Hall. I'm a nurse practitioner. I work over at Lee Family Practice. I'm also a resident here in Lee. So that kind of puts me in a unique position where I kind of consider myself a community embedded provider. So along with being in family practice here, I went and I actually looked up, I have probably, I'm gonna say upwards of 70, maybe 80 families that I call my patients that live here in Lee, as well as a number of individual family members or individuals who are with me that we're only taking care of part of their family. So my primary interest, or what I wanted to offer to the town, was basically an opportunity to either ask me questions about COVID-19, what precautions we could be taking, basically to try and provide some advice and guidance as may be necessary. I'm not quite sure why I hadn't offered to do this sooner. I think one of the things that did definitely get my attention was the recent trend where we found ourselves at the top of the heap in terms of new cases. At the onset of the pandemic, I was actually working up in the COVID tents at the hospital and spent 10 weeks away from my family. So dealing with it, at the very front. And I volunteered for that. I didn't, wasn't told or selected or forced into going to do that. In addition, I also have about 20 years of experience as a paramedic, along with having also worked with, I initially was in the Coast Guard and I flew helicopters for them. So I have a pretty good safety and human factors background that also includes a lot of safety type and accident investigations as well. So basically, Exxon Valdez would go run aground and I would try to go figure out why. Which may not seem like it applies here, but there are more things that may be applicable than you might think. The last thing that I would also add is that when I initially left the Coast Guard, I spent 3 years working for what's called the New Jersey EMS State Task Force, which was a state-level organization aimed at planning for mass casualty events, including weapons of mass destruction or biohazard events, which also included a lot of additional training on that. So that's a little bit of where my background is. Along with that, I've also been living in New Hampshire now for probably close to 15 years. Worked in the emergency room, both here at Wentworth Douglas, as well as Lakes Region, Huggins, Parkland, Franklin, and those are pretty much about it. So, I mean, I don't know if you want to take advantage of that, but I'm willing to basically offer my time, in particular also to either to the select board as an advisory role, or also to the police or fire department if they have questions. It's my personal belief that I think we need to move. I know there's lots of objection or concern about mask mandates and about mandating vaccines. And I think the bottom line is we actually need to move beyond whether we do a mandate or not. And this is less, we have to change the language that surrounds the pandemic at this point. It's become far too focused on I, me, my personal freedoms, and all of that, and it needs to shift from the language of I and me to us and we, because that's the only way that we're getting out of this. And in case in point, like when I go into Market Basket or any place now, I'm back to wearing a mask full time, and it's not for my protection. I spend all day looking in the nose, mouth, and throats of people. I'm fully vaccinated. I'm the one who's most likely to get infected, not know it, and potentially infect somebody else. And so I'm taking every single step that I can to protect everybody else that's around me. And so I'm hoping to be able to lend some of that experience. And again, the board is, of course, welcome to choose to do whatever they want to do with that. But I just wanted to put the offer there out on the table. My hope is that we can move beyond the objection to mandates and move more towards asking the question of, if we're not all fully vaccinated or if we're not wearing masks, why is it that we're not doing that? And I think that's really the root question. So, because the other thing, this is the last thing that I'll say, is within this pandemic, there are certain things that we can modify, okay? We cannot modify, and there's certain things that we can't. We can't modify the infection rate, we can't modify how infectious this mask is, or how infectious the disease is, but we can modify our behaviors and how we respect each other, by wearing a mask, washing our hands, socially distancing. These are all fundamental steps that we can take that add one additional layer of protection. And one of those other key layers is vaccination. And when you look at, if you're all familiar with the Swiss cheese model for accidents or mishaps, each of those things represents one layer of protection. And to get through to the end point where an accident occurs, or a mishap occurs, or say somebody gets infected, we have to let down each or one of those, or find the holes that just line up right so that the vector gets through to the individual who gets infected. And, so we have to be diligent in how we attend to, even the most simple of precautions. And so that's sort of my 2 cents on it, but offer the opportunity for the board to ask me any questions if they have any.
Any questions?
As somebody who's actually working with people in the town, you're seeing the numbers increase right now, is that correct?
Absolutely,
And are you seeing more deaths than we had had in the beginning?
yes.
So do you have any recommendations you would offer right now, or is it something you want to work with us?
I think a lot of it is, and there's also a lot of concern that's been brought up about, the guidance and the things are changing.
Mm-hmm.
And of course they're changing, and that's because the dynamics in the situation are changing. But, my current recommendation, I'm not necessarily recommending or suggesting that the board put out a mandate for masks or something like that, but, in the strongest possible language to put out that they encourage the use of masks, they encourage, social distancing. I don't want to see the schools shut down.
Mm.
Okay, I have a lot of patients who, did not do well with remote learning. I had some that thrived, but I had lots that didn't do well. And if we want the schools to stay open, our businesses to stay open, I don't like going into Market Basket and finding nothing but Corona beer sitting in where the meat aisle was, So I don't want to go back to that, and God knows I don't want us to go through another toilet paper shortage. I know how many people wipe their hand or wash their hands after the bathroom, and we all need access to toilet. So, I don't want us to lose ground, and I think one of the keys to that is, the board could at least, I don't know, my advice would be using the right language and modeling the right behavior to trying to make those necessary changes within the community. And, and I've been able to do that also with my patients. I've had a lot of my patients who've come in, they're resistant to vaccination, they're resistant to wearing a mask, and after 5 or 10 minutes with them, I've usually been able to change their mind. And I've been more successful than most people in getting people vaccinated. And I can go through a little more theory on why I think people aren't getting vaccinated, but again, I know that your time is important, so I can offer that up in writing or whatever you might want to do.
That'd be great.
I have John's contact information for the
Perfect.
email.
Great.
I'm just wondering, because we put something in the e-crier about COVID stuff, didn't we?
We have a section that's.
Yeah. So maybe that's something that, maybe you could take a look at what we put out already and see if there's anything we can do.
The other thing that I might be willing to do is, if you wanted to have an open town meeting, I would be willing to come answer questions of the town directly. Hopefully provided that everybody remains civil about it. So again, I fully respect the idea of patient autonomy. And and I've gone back and forth on whether I would be in support of or against mandates. And the problem is patients are going to try and find a way around a mandate. But what's more important is asking that question of why is there such resistance to the vaccine? Because my thought process at this point, we've administered more than 350 million doses of this vaccine. So I can't think of too many products that have been out there that have been tested that many times.
Can I ask you a question? One of the things I saw in the paper, the state had these open clinics, and they just opened one in Rochester.
Yep.
There didn't seem to be any, like in the seacoast where there's a lot of people. What's the?
Last I knew, I believe they were working on at least one clinic. I'm not sure if it was for the Oyster River School District,
Yeah.
but they were working on that. I would fully agree. There needs to be a greater amount of availability, not only to get people started on the initial round of vaccinations, but also the booster.
Yeah.
So,
I was gonna say,
They-
there's.
They did do it Saturday.
They didn't do it in Rochester, they did it here in
They
Oyster
did here at
River.
Oyster High School Saturday.
We went to the Oyster River one, but the Rochester one actually had a ton of people outside it waiting, and some of them had gotten paid Ubers for rides, and those extra rides, taking days off of work, and it wasn't open. There's only 4 in the entire state, and we didn't have enough people to man that one. So it's really hard right now.
right. The one thing that I can say from the perspective of a primary care provider, I am beside myself in the fact that for two big things. Number one, I don't have the vaccine in my office. And for the love of God, I do not know why. You know, it should have happened a while ago. Because there are patients who are vaccine hesitant, who I've been able to talk to, and then say, well, do you have it here? Because I'll get it now. And then I say no, and I have to trust that they're still gonna follow through on that, of getting the vaccination.
It's scheduling out through January now.
And there's a long scheduling time period. The other piece that I still am very frustrated with is testing. You know, if I have somebody who calls and complains about symptoms and I want to get them tested, it can take me 3 to 4 days to get tested.
90 hours.
And and that's to me, you know, and again, this is not a political issue. This is a public health issue. What it really points to, more than anything else, is the disparities in our healthcare system. So, you know, we have haves and have-nots, and it's, you know, and it's just sort of where, this is where we've discovered where many of our weaknesses are. So those are probably problems that are also occurring at more the 10,000 foot level than down at the grassroots level.
And one thing I'll say is that a lot of the research has been pointing to the need for a booster after 6 months, because the vaccine can be waning, which is another reason if people can't get access to the vaccines as quickly as they need or they want to, wearing masks helps to help them and yourself while you're waiting. And that's the thing, it's not just, you know, well, kind of your own problem now. Well, it's hard to get a vaccine sometimes, so you have to make sure.
You can anticipate about a 2 to 3 week wait,
Right.
probably for a vaccination. I do know that we're anticipating having the Pfizer vaccine available in our office in about 2 weeks.
That'd be great.
But it's, in my opinion, that's not soon enough.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you so much.
okay. Again, I'm more than willing to do whatever. I hope the board would just sort of take it for consideration. The other piece to this is that, and I don't know personally where either the police or the fire department is with vaccinations, but I'm also willing to specifically make a trip to them to speak with them and answer their questions. Again, not to force the vaccine on anybody,
Answer questions.
but to provide them the knowledge and the reassurance that they would need that it would be the right choice. So,
I really appreciate that. Thank you, John.
all right.
Thanks. We're at number 5. Steve Bullock, Public Works Director. Steve?
So I guess Denise has been fielding a lot of phone calls about the ice skating rink that we did last year and wanting it done again this year. So last year it was a by trial to see how it went. I think it went pretty well. We didn't have any complaints. I don't believe we had any traffic issues, even though we had a lot of people use it. So I have talked to neighbors that live closest to it, and they would not be opposed to having it be open at night a little bit, on like Fridays and Saturday nights till like 8. That way they can at least get some stuff done, because it gets dark at 4. So requesting that you let us make it an annual activity. Obviously this year, if we don't get the weather, it's not gonna get built. We don't have the temperatures to even try to start making it right now, but we did buy a liner at the end of the last fiscal year, so we have a real ice skating liner instead of boat shrink wrap like we used last year. So, well, should go better.
What do you have for lights? We talked about at night. What do we have for lights to put up?
I did okay.
Last year, we screwed up a light to a tree for when we went out to do work on it at night, and then ran it off a car battery. It was a little LED light, and it worked really well. We wouldn't do that again this year. We probably you can buy solar powered LED lights, floodlights that would probably work. We just screw them to a tree.
So they charge during the day and then,
Yeah,
are they on like a timer so they'll turn off?
we can put them on a timer. You can buy them that way.
All right, so that shouldn't be that expensive?
No, then you get one set of lights should be enough, and
Okay.
they think like $40. And that's not gonna, if it's not bright enough, last year people were parking in front of it, turning their headlights on so they can skate.
And did we put in the e-car, where are they supposed to park? We didn't have a parking issue, but where did they?
So we just plowed out in front of it and alongside the road with a loader and made it a lot wider, and that seemed to work well. And when that filled up, they parked at the school and walked.
Okay, all right. So maybe if we put something in the e-car saying that we're gonna be, maybe we're gonna be doing the skating rink, and then park out in front by the road, and then if there's no more spaces there, park in Mass Way, just so you're directing them to where they're
Yeah.
supposed to park.
I think we may have told people to park at the highway department too at one point last year. I know they parked there because you could see footprints walking across the snow to it, so.
I just don't want people parking on both sides of, Mass Road
Yeah.
and causing issues.
Do we have to do any wording when we're offering this service for liability?
Well, insurance.
No, your Primex liability coverage should extend to this quite handily.
Okay,
And
great.
I can certainly notify them that we have a skating rink, but that is not a prohibited activity by any stretch of the definition.
Last year, the only thing Primex had to say was hockey and free skate needed to be kept separate.
Yeah.
Great.
Because they didn't want a hockey player hitting a puck into a little kid trying to learn how to skate, knocking them over.
I don't remember last year, there was designated times for each of those
Yeah,
activities.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, when people were over there playing hockey outside those designated times, when it got really busy, they just picked everything up and just started skating with everybody else anyway.
Okay.
Everyone respected each other's
So maybe that could be the rule.
Yeah, so
last year,
Ice
really.
skating.
maybe
Unless no one's
Denise, can that be in the e-crier in terms of specific times for hockey and specific times for just free skating?
I have a piece of paper that we wrote last year that has all that in it.
Perfect.
That sounds fine. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, me too. I appreciate the hard work everyone put into getting that ready.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been as popular, or wouldn't have been as good as it was without the residents that live in that area making a homemade Zamboni and spending a lot of time out there. So,
Perfect. The story, I feel like could be in the book, is a good one
yeah.
about a community. I know that the future hope is to put a new tennis court in eventually so that we can have a flat skating rink. That's super.
This year, if we do, we're probably gonna cover the whole thing with sand to build up the low spot. Because last year, we put a lot of water in it.
Yeah, and keep having the, yeah, makes sense.
So,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks.
Skate away.
And thanks to your staff that helps out,
Yeah,
so.
it makes a big difference. It's nice to have an affordable place to do something in the winter.
Item number 6, Andy Robinson, Town Administrator.
Okay, I had a few things, and I've got a couple of miscellaneous items too, but I will start in order. We had discussed town hall usage policy, and I put together a rudimentary draft town hall usage policy. I have already had some correspondence with regard to this. I took the liberty of using the description historic town hall, and a resident today asked me if I could please identify it either as the town hall or whatever the board preferred to identify that with. It was a sort of a slip on my part from my previous town. We have a historic town hall that we no longer meet in. We call it the historic town hall because people will say they're having meetings at the town hall when they actually are going to the town offices, that sort of thing. So I can correct this so it just says town hall, or I can make it the old town hall, or I can make it the historic town hall, whatever the board's pleasure is.
Old and new.
Yeah, because I call that building the town hall, I call where you work the town offices.
Well, that was
But
the
many
next.
people don't do
That's
that.
confusing when someone says the town hall,
Right.
you think it's a town hall. So having old or historic.
So the next question that this individual asked me was, what do you call the town office building?
Right.
So I was thinking to myself, well, I call it the Daily Building, but there was reference to the municipal office building, the town office building, so I said that I would make the board aware of this and see if they had official titles.
Clarification helps because
Yeah.
people need to
Well, I
know what to
think
call them.
one of the things it says, the historic town hall located at 7 Mass Road, that's pretty explicative in terms of what it is. So I'm okay with it. I'm not wedded
Being
to historic, but
Oh.
you've got the address there, so. Versus 249 Caleb Highway, which is a
Yeah.
different place. So
Yeah. So call them doing municipal offices.
I call them town offices.
So we'll have the town hall and town offices.
got it, and you don't wanna have old or historic.
No, well, in terms of this, I think it says 7 Mass Road, so there's no
Does
confusion.
anyone from the public wanna weigh in on
I don't know if I'll allow them.
that? Oh, okay.
I did also use the first floor space, just to be clear that we are not using the upstairs.
Not ready for prime time. Great.
All right,
Staying with the town hall, I had broken down the electric bill, as the board had discussed a meeting or two ago. It had increased substantially. It's not a huge amount of money, but it had increased, close to fourfold since the children's program went in there. And didn't know whether the board wanted that to be in the government buildings budget line, or if you wanted to split that with the library, or discuss splitting it with the library trustees, or the procedure might go.
thoughts? I have thoughts, but
I have mixed thoughts.
you have mixed thoughts? Well, I'll have my thoughts and then you can do your thoughts. How
Okay,
about
maybe
that?
I'll untangle them.
I think, just based on terms of the assessment, since he's got the bills down here from June through October, average is $20.35. And after the children's program started, the average went up to $80.50. So that's the only thing that's in there. So I would like to charge the difference and have the library pick that up, because it's their particulars. It's their particular
Thanks, maybe.
programs. So that would be my indication or inclination. Yep, who's first?
Go ahead. Okay, so first. You've already talked, right?
Hi, Katrinka Palakia, Wiswell Road, I'm a library trustee. I was wondering, I understand, but I was wondering if this would possibly be a good use of ARPA funds, since the reason that we're in the town hall was for social distancing and COVID, much the way the town is paying, getting ARPA funds for the rent that you're paying at the municipal. I don't know, it's just a question.
We're not using ARPA funds for the
There
rent.
was, right in the beginning, right?
No, that was out of unassigned fund balance. We took 100,000 out, didn't we?
I thought we paid for that with the CARES Act.
No.
No?
I can certainly check, but I don't have any indication.
Oh, okay.
It was
Well,
unassigned funds.
that being aside, but, because I could have been misinformed, but it happens. I was wondering if that, additional expense could be, could be an ARPA expense or not,
I can certainly look into that, get an answer.
Because that is the reason we're there, is for, we have more room to social, distance with the kids. So, that's
Absolutely.
Anybody else? Annie, did you want to speak, or you?
We do have to pay some of the utilities in our budget, but this additional fee would not be in our budget, so we would have to take it from something else.
So I think in the end, the question is, does it help us to know what spending goes to which thing, so we have a full picture? And if that's the case, then take it from the budget, but then increase the budget to represent it. Well, if you're, I'm trying to figure out how you pay for it.
Well, town has to pay for it. It's what
Right.
bucket it comes out of.
Right,
That's the issue.
so that's the thing, it's gonna end up coming from somewhere, but do you wanna have it on record so you understand, okay, this is library expenses? Or does it just come out of the town building?
Well, it's related, this particular change is related to the addition of that particular program in that particular location, so
Right, so it should be with the library.
I would think.
So does that mean that going forward, we add that to the library budget for the future?
It depends on how long they're going to continue to use that space. That's the thing.
Yeah, and then do we have the same policy for everyone using a building that increases the building cost?
Right at the moment, they're the only ones that use that structure.
Right, but like the annex didn't have Historical Society now does.
And they don't increase, as far as I know, there's not an increased expense for them using that space.
Do we have it empty for a while? I think, did we have it empty? So it was used, and then did they have it empty? for-
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, it
I
would
can
be the
pull the
same.
background on that.
Yeah,
So
it's
we
the
just wanna
same thing.
figure out how to,
If they're using that particular space,
Yeah.
they should be paying whatever the differential is. And I understand that they have to keep on the heat in the annex, they don't turn on the heat. There is a charge for lighting and stuff like that, so if you can do the same thing for that, that would be fine. And yeah, they're having some expenses that aren't associated with the normal use of that building at this particular time, they should be paying something too. So, Andy, can you check that out and then come back to us?
I can. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I have a question or a point.
Oh, Mr. Tappan.
John Tappan, 187 Stepping Stones Road. It seems like a lot of discussion about $60 a month, but I think it should be pointed out that at least part of that cost is for circulator pumps for the heat system, which you would probably keep on at some level, even if there were no programs there. Because you're looking at the electric use during the non-heating season, comparing it to what's the heating season.
good point.
So that full change is not entirely because of the programs. Part of it is,
That's a
but
good
not all
point.
of it.
So how about if we do this? How about if we monitor it and just see how that goes? And the town will cover it until we determine that there's significant additional cost. It's like $10, I'm not too concerned. But when we're getting up into 60 and 70, that's,
I can certainly monitor this next few months.
So let's-
report back to you.
yeah, let's check back in like after the heating season and just see what it looks like.
Okay. Okay. The next item I had was road naming protocol. There was a discussion a few weeks ago about the process for naming roads and approval for naming roads. In Lee, I had taken what I was familiar with that we use in Deerfield. We ended up using it after we got Turkey Lane, Lotus Lane, and Skidoo Lane in the same year. But I could certainly adapt this. This was as I mentioned, the language was a little stuffy, and I could change that, but I didn't know if the board wanted me to come forward with a warrant article giving the board the authority to approve names.
Appreciate that. I think that was a really helpful change.
Can you check with Karen? Because I think we have something like this.
No, we have something that says that the road is named after landowners
Yeah.
of that property, which very much changes how you name and how you value those names as a town, which is why I mentioned having a different, because this talks about the natural,
We're historical or geographical.
right,
If it has, they'd like the name to have some geographical or historical significance. If it doesn't, you can try to make your case to the Board of Selectmen for why it needs to be Skidoo Lane or Motocross Lane or what have you.
right.
Okay, all right. Because ultimately, we get to name it, so.
Right, but when we're using the name of the landowner, that's a very limited population type of person who could be named after. When you look at all the roads in Lee, there's a lot of these names of these men that were landowners, which really is a very small group of people. So for me, I find that that's not an inclusive way and not a thoughtful way to express who we are as Lee residents.
Okay. Not very interested in it, so I will vote no. So you vote yes, I vote no, nothing happens. So the only thing I would suggest is check with Karen. I don't mind incorporating what we already use and that. I don't mind doing that. But yeah,
Yep, I'll check with Karen.
and bring it back to us and we'll
Yes.
have a further discussion and we'll get another person to vote one way or the other and we can move forward or not, so.
I think I will just say this, that there are names of roads in our town that are named after slave owners. And I just want to be cognizant of how that feels to people that live in our town and how that, what that means. So just something to think about in the future. Thank you.
Who would be slaveholders? Who? Which ones?
Captain Emerson Smith?
Emerson Smith,
Yeah.
Captain Parker, and the other one, what's the one that, I don't know the names. But there are, I mean, you know, that's the pool that we're choosing. And a lot of people feel strongly that we should really think about how we're naming things. To me, there's, you know, Esker would have been a great name for, or some other thing that's, you know, valuable, natural area as opposed to, you know, I mean, as a woman who didn't have a right to own land for a really long time, it's hard for me to, you know, think about the fact that there are so many women that aren't represented in our names of our town roads. So you drive around, you see that, and, you know, it affects people differently. Maybe that's not important to some people, but it's very important to others.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else, Andy?
Not with regard to road naming. I do have the, Katrina had contacted me about Good Energy, Standard Power, Community Choice.
They all look the same, basically.
Which is essentially an energy aggregator that works to make the community the actual energy provider. I know, I hate to keep saying this, the town I'm from works with these folks, not in as complex a way as they've talked to you, I believe, Katrina. We just buy our power from them. You have the ability to get set rates, which very typically turn out to be lower than your standard utility providers. It also gives the community the option to select what type of energy they're going to get. They have net metering agreements with hydroelectric folks, with solar folks, with Standard Power. There's no particular contractual hook to people in the community. They can sign up for the program if they want. They can stay where they are. They can go with another aggregator. But there's a lot of good options as far as where you get your power from, and as far as the town itself is concerned, the municipal function. You should be able to definitely save some money over standard contract with Eversource or the co-op, which are our primary providers. And I think you talked to Brian, and this is Bob Hayden's group. They're based out of Nashua now. I know they come and do a very slick but informative presentation about what they offer. And if the board is interested, we can certainly go that path. One of the reasons that Katrina and I discussed it and decided to bring it up at the board meeting was they need copies of your electrical usage to give you a quote, and unfortunately Eversource and the cooperative, co-op, both charge a fee.
Which I found out today, they actually pay for, not us.
Okay.
So the fees and the paperwork, but we don't have to pay for it, but we would just have to sign it saying that we agreed.
And go forward, okay, great, I didn't see that.
Yeah,
I saw the
that's about that.
$300 and the $45 per line, and
Yeah.
but, well, that's much simpler then, but, and I can certainly bring you I can prepare the application for a quote. There's no particular risk if they are paying for the fees to get your electrical usage, and get that information, and you can decide whether it's something you want to move forward with. I'm also looking at a similar program with Granite, which is a telecommunications aggregator. You change nothing with your telecommunications. You keep the same lines, you keep the same accounts, all of that. They take over, and with their buying power, typically take about 30 to 33% off your VoIP, your landlines, and your internet as well. And they're based in Quincy, Mass, but are a huge aggregator. They handle all the Walmart business offices and stores in the country, all the Walgreens, some hotel chains, that sort of thing. And it's usually a very easy process. They'll give you a no obligation quote as to what they can do, and give you a guarantee on the rate year to year. So as soon as I have that information, I'll bring that to the board as well.
So I hear lots of pluses and no negatives. So my mother said when something sounds too good to be true, it usually is. So when's the other shoe gonna drop? Or is it definitely that great? Because you said you use the electric?
We do. We use what's called not the good energy version. We use community choice through Standard Power, which is just an aggregation of power. We don't have a formal energy agreement. We do have some choice in Deerfield, but not as much as presented in what you had seen, Katrina.
Yeah, they have options, so you can look at different packages and do it different ways. You could start off with a simple thing and then you can make it complicated. A person, an individual, but there's two different things. So one is actually for our municipal buildings, and we can make that choice, you know, to try it. And then there's also, if we wanted to offer it to the community, then we would have to have a committee that worked on that, made those plans. And then the choices would be available, so you could actually buy just green energy. It just costs a little bit more. Or you can have a green energy unless it costs more. You know, there's all these different kind of ways you can do it. And if you, let's say you really want a green energy and you signed up for that, and then, you know, something happened where you had an expense you weren't expecting and you wanted to save money, you could call them and they could switch it back to the, both, you know, whatever.
You can switch back in less than
Whenever
24 hours.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
you go for the community process, typically you'd have a warrant article that went forward, you'd let the community vote on it, and you'd have an energy committee that presented the options, although these folks do a pretty good job of presenting options to the community. They do a lot of outreach with mailing and internet and whatever else you can provide them or they can get.
So they basically buy, so they were saying that they basically, like Eversource buys twice a year power, and it tends to be in summer or winter when it's highest, and so then we pay those prices. Because of this group, they can do it at different times that are less expensive. The co-op is actually a little bit more flexible because of the co-op, so their numbers tend to be lower, but they showed the charts and graphs of when you buy and how much you can save, and it's a real savings. You're just basically buying power as a group, and there's a lot of local communities that have decided to do this and have been really happy. So.
Yeah, and I can make the presentation available to everyone on Start With Use.
Yeah, and they can talk to everyone. They can come here, talk to us, they can talk to people individually, whatever you'd like.
Simply put, they're energy brokers with an emphasis on providing green and hydro options to people that want it. If you don't want it, they can put an emphasis on just saving you money.
Right, you can pick. Yep.
So can you bring something back for maybe the next meeting?
Okay?
Do you want it sent in the presentation they sent as well, the PowerPoint?
Yes, I'll send Scott the presentation, and I'll see, we maybe put that on the town website as well, so people can take a look at it.
You send it to Mr. Brown too.
Yeah, it's a fairly innocuous, it doesn't promise anything.
Yeah, and if you don't like it, you don't have to use it.
Okay, have on here just in case the board had recommendations, but the Lamprey River Advisory Committee, and I just noticed that I spelled advisory wrong. They're looking for new Lee representatives. They need one or two individuals, or they would like one or two individuals from Lee interested in serving on the advisory council. And I know we've had this on the e-crier. I think I had it on Facebook as well. I've not had any responses, but
I'll volunteer for that.
Yay, that's great. Thank you.
Sign him up. Jimmy Brady. Or James Brady, excuse me.
It's really Francis James, but I go by James.
Oh.
I think it's officially
Go by
once.
Jim.
So glad to have representation, thank you.
Can you come into my office?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, we'll get you some information about it and get you some.
Okay.
Thank you, Jimmy.
I have the information, Stratford Regional Planning Commission had put out some information on their municipal record digitization project that we had talked about. This is going to be no cost to members. They are going to offer the service to non-members at a fee. I have not seen what their fee structure is going to be. They did give some specific information about the digitalization process. I didn't realize by state RSA you have to use a PDF format for municipal records when you digitize them. You don't have any other options. So that would be the format that we would be looking at if we use them. And as I mentioned, we have the ability to get in line. We will be at the end of the line and we will have to pay either our dues or the whatever they come up with for processing fees. But
Maybe you guys can, because one of the things, I had a problem with this, not the digitization, but the part of it is the management part of it. how do we structure it? And she talked about, file naming and stuff like that, yeah. But, if I'm looking for, records from 1969 or whatever, how am I gonna look for that stuff? How are we gonna find the stuff? And that's the part that is kind of missing in terms of the management part of it. I'm not gonna look through 20,000 PDFs to find what I'm looking for. There needs to be some kind of index or something up above it that you can type in keywords and it'll look for you.
She said everything would have a name, and it would be named based on what it is. If you're looking for the year, like, maybe every select board meeting is the year and the thing, I mean, it has to have a name.
Yeah, it would be up to us to choose how I think we
Right.
So
structure it.
maybe that's something that you guys can think about in terms of how that works.
The question is, can we get it mine?
I don't know, we haven't decided that yet. ABC says that next year they're gonna recommend the money, so
But this year,
there's no more budget this year though.
we could use unassigned fund balances.
You can do all kinds of things, so.
Well, that is the status of the digitization process at this point.
Appreciate it.
Under miscellaneous, I had a couple of things. I had forwarded the warrant articles, just the baseline warrant articles. I've had no additional warrant article questions or warrant articles presented. I have checked with the town clerk and Karen, planning and zoning, and according to Karen, planning and zoning has nothing, and the town clerk's office has seen nothing submitted by way of petition warrant article at this point. A couple of things that I wanted to bring up. One, both Katrina and Denise had talked with me about the last year's fire pond and cistern capital reserve warrant article. This was warrant article 15, and it left out naming the select board as agents to expend. And DRA flagged this last year and said you really need to do that warrant article over again with the board listed as agents to expend. So if there's no objection from the board, I would prepare language to get that corrected.
Does that create a change of purpose?
It is a change of purpose.
So then we need to get the higher level.
It was last year. a change
Last
of
year it
purpose.
was a change of
It was,
purpose.
yeah.
It specifically said to see if the town will vote to change the purpose of the existing fire pond and cistern capital reserve fund to allow for the installation of new fire ponds and cisterns and to allow for repair and replacement of existing fire ponds and cisterns. It left out the following, which was, and to name the select board as agents to expend. So it changed the purpose, and when you change the purpose, you should also update the agents to expend according to the revenue administration.
So in terms of if we put it on this year, is that a change of purpose?
No, I don't believe so.
So
It
it's
just
the lower-
clarifies that you're the agents to expend.
Okay, so it's the lower level, it's just a simple majority.
Actually, probably true, although I had listed 2/3 vote required because I had copied the language, so let me double check on that and see if it can go with a simple majority as opposed to 2/3.
It's just good to know. The other thing, the last warrant article there, that shouldn't be applicable for this year. The $4,500, that's not gonna be applicable this year, so that one can be taken off.
Article 13,
Yeah, that was just to put money back in, because we got a grant for,
from the New
doing the
Hampshire.
assessment.
Except those warrant articles, those placeholders, the numbers in the warrant articles that we've seen already are just placeholders till we decide.
Yeah, but that particular one, we're not gonna do that here. Other thing, Andy, is you can load up, I guess, after we have more discussions, but at least load up the warrant articles for monies going into the capital reserve funds from what the ABC did, at least
Right. Okay.
put that in there.
Yep.
And I believe most of those are from the financial planning tool anyways. The only one that's kind of iffy is the one for town building, so at least you can load it with those.
The other warrant article question I had was, and I had talked with Katrina a little bit about this, we have a sign ordinance in town that seems problematic to me, particularly section 5. It basically says a property owner may place one sign with a sign face no longer than 6 square feet on a property at any time when a property has frontage on more than one road. And it specifically references political signs. one temporary sign per lot may be located on an owner's property for a period of 30 days prior to an election. And given that elections have multiple candidates and that homes have multiple occupants, spouses and partners don't always see eye to eye on political campaigns, I think you're really inviting trouble to leave this as enforceable. And I don't see serious consequences, I guess, unless somebody wanted to give the town a hard time or just test it. I think we could end up, on the front page of the Union Leader and a couple of $1,000s of legal bills before we get out of this. And I know the Municipal Association's legal department doesn't think there's any validity to having an ordinance that says you can only have one political sign on your lawn for any given election. I don't know if the board might ask the planning board that you have to correct this with a warrant article, is my understanding. The planning board could put in a warrant article, or the select board could put in a warrant article to change this. If the select board put the warrant article in to change it, the planning board would still have to hold a public hearing. So if you could put language in to change it, and they would have to hold a hearing.
What would we change it to?
I think you just get rid of it. I
We
don't.
haven't held up in any of the court cases yet. It's a freedom of speech. When you have to read a sign in order to decide what its rules are, that's a freedom of speech issue. And when you limit someone's number of signs, another freedom of speech issue. Like he said, you have a bunch of candidates running at the same time. You're forcing someone to pick one candidate for different positions. And so all those things affect someone's ability in the town of Lee to speak about what they want with their own property and land. So in all the court cases that have gone through so far, that has not held up in court.
Have we ever enforced this?
Yes, many times.
Yeah.
I'm literally amazed.
Yeah,
I
was
somebody
horrified when I found out. Yep.
Taking you to court.
Yep.
Don't look at me.
Yep. I have many friends who've had.
How is it enforced?
Karen.
Yeah, they get letters.
Karen goes after it. Oh, no
Karen
kidding.
takes the signs.
Karen does,
Yeah.
oh.
Or people bring them to her.
Like they send the police out to look at all these.
She
Pick
brings
up
the
all
signs
these
when they're in public places,
Right.
not.
No, on property.
It's private property that it's really not. But that's what we're discussing, that rule.
Certainly, for improperly placed signs that are in violation of 664-17, by all means, have Karen or
Oh, yeah.
the police,
And I had a
you guys
problem
collect
with
and hold them, but I think that
Elections,
When
because
you own your own
I-
property and you can't put a sign as you want on your
I had a friend who
property,
was running
and
for
you're
sheriff,
limiting
so-
someone's access to speech.
So you have different ones
So this
on,
definitely covers
it's
private
like,
property?
Yes.
yes, it says one temporary sign per lot may be located on an owner's property.
My friend had 2 graduating seniors and had to choose which one sign to put on their one. That's not okay.
You also could put up the one to say that you supported the police, and you couldn't put up another sign
Right.
at the
So
same
you
time. So
supported
you had
fire.
to choose one or the
Right.
other.
Right.
Can you check with the Municipal Association legal department and just,
Yes, I can, I've got an old.
where did this come from?
I
I
don't
don't know.
think there's any particular
No
solid
way.
legal ground for this.
when was this
I didn't
instituted?
think so.
Yeah, that's what.
2019, it's part of the 2019 zoning ordinances.
Did I vote for this? Jeez.
I don't-
I
Probably.
knew the public one, but I didn't know about the private one.
Yeah, it starts out with this sort of generic, making it sound like you couldn't have too many commercial signs on your
Yeah.
property, but it quickly zeroes in on political signs. Says you cannot have more than one on your private property at a time. And you can't leave it up for more than 30 days either.
Right.
And who submitted this? Planning board?
Yeah, this was part of the zoning ordinances, and they're listed as our zoning ordinances on the planning board webpage.
We have to watch those people, I guess. All right, yeah.
It needs to be in the warrant articles this coming year, and I think
Okay,
it's not
that
time
sounds
where
good.
we'll.
And the last thing that I would mention, I was not aware of this. I was finalizing the computer replacement schedule and talked with Steve Gagnon this morning, who said that he had a fair amount of difficulty backing up the police server on Friday or Saturday. and pointed out that it, as well as the town office server, both really need to be replaced. The town office is a 2014 server. The police department is a 2015 server, but the 2015, the police, even though it's newer, is more in need of immediate attention. I don't believe we've got $7,500 left in the computer hardware replacement budget at this time. What Steve suggested was ordering them in March, putting them in the '23 budget with hopes of installation in early July on the new budget. He also gave me sort of a cryptic warning that he's not sure how supply chain matters are going to come into play regarding servers, but right now, the cost for both of those servers to replace would be just a tick under $7,500.
So if you can update that list.
Yep.
And provide it to the select board, because we're going to have to figure out, what we're doing.
Yep, I can. It is updated, and I'll get you copies of it.
Do you want to say something?
I may be able to come up with a good portion of that out of our budget.
That'd be great.
So I'll get with Andy and find out what our portion would be,
Thank
Okay.
and we can just take care of ours.
Great.
Anything else?
I'm sorry. Oh, yes, I did, at the last ABC meeting, or not your last meeting, but the one that the BOS was at before, there was discussion about a warrant article to change the creation of the CIP. And do you want me to, there seemed to be general agreement at the ABC meeting, but it wasn't a formal select board meeting. So I didn't know if you wanted me to go ahead with language for that to bring back to you.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Another thing I'd ask you to do, which the board hasn't decided yet, but could you give us draft wording in terms of changing the elderly exemptions,
Yes.
the revenue and the property exemption? We haven't decided if we're gonna do it, and if we're gonna do it, how much.
Yeah,
But
we have to
if
see
you
the
could at
level.
least have the warrant articles drafted in the draft form, we can at least take a look at those.
I can. Actually, I have those pretty much ready to go. So.
No, these are all really great ones.
Seems like there was another one, but, okay. Till at the end. So you all set, Andy?
Yes, I am. My other folder is non-public.
Okay. I move to accept the consent agenda as presented. Do I have a second?
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. You have things to sign, I think.
I do. Although actually, I'm not going to sign that until I change it.
Can you speed it up, Casper? This is taking forever.
I'm gonna do it under the grant, is that correct?
Agreement. It won't be this agreement.
The rest of these are information and don't require signatures.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Typically what I would give the chair.
And this Carrie telling me my signature's terrible.
It's like a chicken monster.
I'm not wasting anyone's time, am I? This is informational, you said? Okay. Is the one down here with the sign here a signed one?
Those are just
Okay,
information, I
change those
believe.
words.
Right, I'm going to change the wording.
Okay, great.
Just call it the town hall.
Thanks for this information.
And did you change the agenda to say A and C? Okay.
Scott?
When you go into non-public, we would need to go in under A and C, not just A this evening. Okay. We had primed Carrie for that, but
A and C.
Wrong time.
So did our balance go down by 1.4 million yet? Not yet?
Not till Wednesday.
they haven't
Don't
cashed
say
it
what
yet, I
day,
don't
but
think.
It doesn't say what day.
Oh, sorry.
Thursday, Friday. We'll see.
One day.
Someday in the future.
Yeah, the 1.4 million is the amount we paid to the county in December.
Thank you.
That's one of the painful ones.
almost $1 million to the school every month, so.
Yeah, but you get used to
Where's
that,
the
million
million
every
account?
month to the school,
Yeah.
but the 1.4 is like,
Next year will be over $1 million.
ooh, don't say that.
So
So,
that works.
I move to enter non-public session, I'm sorry, RSA 91-A, colon 3, Roman numeral 2, A and C. Do I have a second?
Second?
A roll call vote required. Katrina Casper.
Yes.
Scott Bugbee, yes. Motion passes.
Yeah.
Can I,
It's a little brisk. Not here.
And we would have been out in like 5 minutes, but we talked about you, Denise, all the rest of it.
Is that what the last
And there's so
one's all
many
about?
words about wonderful and fabulous, it just, we had too many words, it just took a long time.
All right, I move to seal the minutes from the non-public session.
Second that.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Anything else?
I have nothing further.
You get to do it.
I don't want to do the adjourn, I want to do the motion. I move to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second?
All those in favor say
Aye.
aye. Motion passes.